Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Purple Donut Podcast, Office Hours.
Office Hours.
We did end up sticking with just Office Hours for the name.
It wasn't much of a battle, so.
No, it wasn't. We had a couple ideas, but we just really liked Office Hours. This is a little bit different from our normal episodes that you're going to get at the first Monday of every month. And if you follow Focus, what you're used to there, we're still going to have those very lengthy conversations about what we've been working on and what Purple Donut Studios has been up to. But this is going to be a little more of a specific, detailed conversation about stuff that we're working on, stuff that we've learned, and kind of diving into our process with some stuff. So, if you're in the video field, if you're in a creative field, hopefully you'll get some cool tidbits from this. And even if you're not, this could be a nice glimpse into our process and what it's like to work with us. And I'm sure we'll have some nuggets of wisdom that you could use for some of your own projects if you're thinking of getting into video production or social web design, any of the stuff that we have our fingers in. And this is a very personal one for us. This is a project that we did for ourselves.
Finally.
Yeah, and it's been a long time coming, but this was something we worked on at the very end of last year. It was the last project of the year, and that was our first video ad for Purple Donut Studios.
Heck yeah. And the coolest part about this production is that it is showing on the big screen, technically.
Literally.
The huge screen in movie theaters. So, without further ado, welcome to a little bit of insight and office hours based on our advertisement.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of context for this, the idea for this originally came because we had access to a local movie theater. So we're based in Frederick, Maryland, and there is a movie theater chain here called Warehouse Cinemas, which is lovely. I think they have 3 locations. So they're
3 locations spread across a couple counties. Yeah, so far. Great concept, great food, nice bar, really cool specials. Like they're really changing the game in the movie theater scene, which is nice. It's a nice breath of fresh air when you can go and see a movie for $7. So on a Tuesday.
Yep, $7 Tuesdays are pretty great.
Beer wall, that's even better, but great seats,
it feels like
they're doing well.
It's worth going to see a movie there. I didn't see a movie like post-COVID. I didn't see very many movies at all because I was just like, I couldn't go for a while because of, no one wanted to be in an enclosed space. And then I went to see, I think I saw the Batman, the latest with the Robert Pattinson one. And I saw that at just a normal, like, big chain movie theater. And I was like, that was fine. Like, it was nothing special. Warehouse it feels like a much more luxurious time out. But something that they do that's a really cool idea is all the pre-movie ads. So you've got the movie. Before the movie, you have the standard trailers. That's the same. Before that, when everyone's still like filing in and sitting down, if you've been to like any other theater, it's usually like some kind of like little behind the scenes packages for like TV shows or like their movie trivia and like, ads for Sour Patch Kids and all that junk.
My mouth is watering now.
I'm not going to knock Sour Patch Kids.
Sour candy.
Oh yeah. What Warehouse does instead is all of those pre-show ads are local businesses, every single one. And there's a couple different ways you can go about having a piece on there. Some people go for something really simple that's literally just like a static like card, like a PowerPoint slide basically with their information and a little bit of music. And some people go for more fully produced videos that are like 30 seconds long. I'll give you one guess as to which route we went.
Yes, the postcard presentation slideshow image is what we did.
Yep. One AI-generated JPEG is what we decided to go with.
AI is great now. So, I mean,
It still can't do text. I still have yet to find a tool that can
No.
do text
When I was
reliably.
working on my secret project that you know about with the dog and everything,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it came close once or twice, like
It
the
tries.
words. It had some letters. There were letters that kind
Yeah.
of were in the shape of something.
It's like a toddler that is like trying real hard to spell stuff. One of my favorite TikToks, which rest in peace TikTok, or maybe not rest in
Well,
peace.
we'll
I don't
find
know.
out.
We'll find out at
This
some
might
point.
age like milk if we put it out.
Either way, one of my favorite TikToks is there's a little boy who's he's looking at a jar of Nutella and he's spelling it out. He says Nutella, and then the dad off camera is like, "What does that spell?" And he just goes, "Peanut butter." I'm like,
I have a similar one that we scream it out all the time. There was a little girl. I think her and her mom were like reading in one of those books that like shows the word or whatever, and the word was who, and she kept
hmm.
saying Hawa, Hawa, and the mom's like, what does it say, Anaya? Hawa.
To be fair, English spelling makes no sense.
Yeah, and a lot of English things don't make sense, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyway,
office hours. This is not supposed to be like the
we're
Purple
supposed
Donut
to be
podcast.
focused.
Yeah, we're dialed in. We wrote a script and everything.
Oh yeah, so dialed in. We wrote a very nice script that we will promptly ignore.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we wanted to come up with a 30-second ad for our services, specifically for video production. We do other stuff, but we felt like it made sense to be in a movie theater. We wanted to show off the video production side, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of our bread and butter. So we started conceptualizing. And so the idea was we wanted to show people what we can do, and we wanted to
Yep.
show the variety of what we can do. That was one of the big tent poles because
Yeah.
we do a lot of different stuff. We do a lot of marketing and advertising, but we also do weddings and we do interviews and we do a lot of stuff. So we were thinking, how can we show the broad scope of that
Mm-hmm.
in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds and extremely well produced.
Yeah.
Like super high quality, fitting on the big screen. You can tell that this was made by, because there are ads on there that you could tell that were shot on an iPhone or they used a drone in a couple static photos. And I'm
Sure.
not knocking anybody's stuff. But when there is a super well produced video on there, especially for us, it grabs our attention. And I
Mm-hmm.
know when I'm watching Super Bowl ads with my family who aren't super well versed in what good quality video is, like when there's a good quality one, they know and they pay
Yeah.
attention to it. So that was a huge one of our more prominent goals with the video was to make it look amazing on the
Yeah.
big screen. Super fitting.
Yeah. And when we talk about the gear that we use, well, you'll talk about the gear that we used. That was a big, we used a bunch of new toys on this that really put it over the top.
We really, we're not in the gear section yet, so we'll go into in depth, but we really pulled out all the stops.
We really did.
Only thing I'm thinking that we didn't use was like a reflector. Like
Yeah,
maybe?
and we didn't use the drone.
Oh, no drone. Okay, yeah, no drone.
No
That's
drone.
true. We could have put it in there somewhere.
We
we'll
could
make
have,
a new
but
one.
yeah, but like honestly, compared to the lenses that we were using, I think the
Oh my
drone shots
gosh.
would have stood out. I don't think they would
Oh
have
darn,
fit.
we have to buy a drone that carries our Ursa now. Darn
We
it.
have to buy an octocopter that can
Oh
carry
my
the drone.
Let's just buy a
Yeah,
helicopter. I'll man it, you fly it. It's
I,
fine.
I love this.
Yeah.
This is a great plan. Next year.
Next year, yeah. Tax write off.
I'm
Kevin will like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Great tax write-off. So I'm remembering one of the first ideas we had that evolved into what it ended up being. But one of the 1st concepts we had was the idea of like a single shot, like one continuous track. Do you remember this? This was a while back.
Yeah, the first
one continuous tracking
one was a
shot. Yeah. That would go through like all of these different environments. So like doing this in a studio environment is what we were thinking, like some kind of soundstage. and kind of like camera on one long dolly that would roll through all these different setups. So like, here's a restaurant that, we're doing, like, we can do a commercial for the restaurant. Here's a
Mm-hmm.
wedding that we're shooting, and like, it's you and me like walking through it with the camera as the environment is changing, which super cool idea. And we had some inspiration for that.
Yep.
There are other ads that do that, and would have been super cool. We were running into there were two issues we ran into with that. The main uh, one was logistics, and the other was scheduling.
Yeah, scheduling was insane during this project.
Yeah, that was the trick, because what we decided we wanted to do was use as many of our actual clients in this ad as we possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason we said we wanted a restaurant set up was because one of our clients is Tortacos, which is a taqueria in Germantown, and they've been amazing, and we wanted to use them in this ad to show, like, here's what we can do from a marketing and social side, because they've been, like, the work we've done with them has been some of our favorite over the last year.
Yep.
So we wanted to have them. For the wedding, we wanted to use a couple from a wedding that we shot, who have ended up being like great friends, and we see them at chamber events all the time. We wanted to use Johnny Slick from Straight Shot, a gym that we did a commercial for that's actually running at Warehouse now, right
Yeah.
alongside ours, which is
Right.
super cool.
When
So
we
we're just
went to
slowly.
watch our premiere, and then theirs popped up right after it, I was like, it's meant to be.
It's great. It's great. We're just slowly taking over the pre-show at Warehouse Cinemas, and
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
the
mad
goal.
about it. So the challenge we had was getting all of these people to be available at the same time for a oneer, and for an extended period of time, because shots like that need rehearsal and they need multiple
Mm-hmm.
takes to get it right. And we were by the time that we decided, yes, we want to do this, we wanted it to start running in January. I think, pulled the trigger on this in early November. And so we had to have this thing produced and like delivered to Warehouse to play by Christmas, basically.
Yep.
And once you factor in, like, Thanksgiving was right in the middle of that, so a bunch of people were traveling and not available for a couple weeks.
All the holidays, all the elections, all the
There was a lot of stuff
life
going
of
on.
experiences.
Yep. So no one was real. We could not find a day that everyone was all available to do that.
Yep.
So we said, okay, what's our plan B? How can we get this same effect? And so we ended up going for, instead of a oneer, a bunch of different shots in these different environments that we then would shoot and cut in a way that they would flow together nicely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And love it or not, we used ChatGPT.
We did.
We used
actually
ChatGPT. We put all of, basically, if you've never used ChatGPT, it's an AI. You put in a question or ask it to do something, and it does it at a pretty good level very quickly. And
Yeah.
there's some revising and things that you need to do, but all of the information that Cam just spewed at you, we basically put that into ChatGPT and said, what other way can we do this? Can you help us create a script?
Yeah.
And it did a pretty great job right off the bat. Like,
It really did.
We were pretty happy with what it was saying. You know, we changed a few things, changed a few scenes, cut a couple scenes, but ChatGPT actually was part of the backbone of the whole thing.
100%. Now, one thing to bear in mind is that, like you were saying, we did not go to ChatGPT and basically say, write us a script for an ad, enter. Like, you can do that, and it will generate something. I don't know what it would generate, frankly.
Something will be there. Yeah.
Something will be there. Something will come out the other end. But I think if you compared what came out of ChatGPT versus what we fed in, I think we fed more words in than came out at the end.
Yeah.
Like, we pumped in paragraphs. We said, like, this is our business. This is our concept. These are the clients we want to feature. This is why we want to feature each one. Here's background on vision. Each client. Yeah. So basically we had everything except the specifics of, like, really the only thing we were really missing at that point was dialogue. like specific dialogue for us to say, because we still wanted it to be us like walking through these environments and having, saying lines to camera.
Yep.
And it was able to generate some really nice lines. And part of one of my favorite things that it did, which was a line we actually kept in, there's a line where a part where you're walking through the straight shot gym, and we wanted to like show off, here's what we can do for your brand. And it came up with the line, "We help your brand flex its muscle." And
Yeah.
as soon as I saw that, I was like, "Oh, no notes. That's awesome."
Yeah,
Like,
that's a good one. It was great because it associated the line. This was for all the scenes. I think it came up with like 5 or 6 different scenes, but each
mhm.
scene it tailored and curated the lines and the script towards the vibe, towards
Yeah.
the genre of location. Like it was that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So I think the thing that I would say ChatGPT did was not necessarily come up with the idea, because I don't think ChatGPT is great at coming up with original ideas
Yeah.
for the most part. Sometimes maybe, but for the most part, it's not great at that. But what it is really good at is adding detail to things. So that's how we used it, was to basically generate a really specific thing. It didn't even have like, it had shot descriptions. Those ended up not being super accurate, because we were like, we have a vision, we know what this looks like, we know what the environment we're shooting is. But it would say like, it's a close up of Cameron holding a camera at a wedding altar and then walking down the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
It would include stuff like that, and it did a really nice job. So
Absolutely.
with that, armed with that, we then started scheduling everything, um, and getting everything prepped for shooting. We did storyboard stuff a little bit, and I think that's where I want to pass it to you, director of photography man over here, because
Thank you.
that's where you really had a really specific vision whenever we went into these shoots.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. So obviously we already talked about scheduling and trying to find time to get all these people in different places and um, obviously a couple of the hiccups. Well, there were 2 scenes that we could do all by ourselves essentially, which was the opening scene, the theater scene, which is exactly what was our first shot and first shoot day that we scheduled.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Warehouse Cinemas, for letting us come in and use your facilities at the butt crack of dawn before anybody else was coming in there. That was really great. But we knew that we wanted the first, like, we knew we wanted this video to live essentially, which was on the big screen at a movie theater. That was
Mm-hmm.
like our initial foundational vision for it. And what would be better to reach that specific audience than shooting your first opening scene in the movie theater that those people were probably sitting at, like
Yeah.
they are physically in those chairs that we were in. And my favorite piece of the entire video is the first push scene with us using a popcorn bag and what tasted like day old popcorn because I ate a couple handfuls of it. It was microwave before you came, but
It was
was
hours
not
old.
movie theater popcorn. Okay,
No, it was
that's my
not.
only gripe about the entire process. Was there's like 9 takes of me shoving popcorn in my mouth, and none of them were even included. Barely, like it's fine, but
Welcome to the world of editing, man.
yeah, I know. And I'm behind the camera usually, so being on camera was different for me.
Yeah.
But our opening scene, something that would be interesting to the viewer, right? Our platform was mainly we can repurpose this for Facebook and meta ads and YouTube and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we
And
will.
but our main home for it was Warehouse Cinemas. So our opening scene is a push shot into a popcorn bag that is a Warehouse Cinemas bag into a 2 shot of us having a conversation of us saying, we should make videos just like these people do on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
And basically that was the first catch, like our hook for the people, a visual hook of us sitting in a theater where they could be sitting, us dressed in normal street clothes. Like we weren't wearing purple donut uniform, we weren't in suit and tie, we weren't in extravagant polos. No, we were in Hawaiian t-shirts.
Yeah. We wanted something that was going to pop against the dark, because like the theater is all dark. We had them turn the house lights off, so we were just using our lighting, and the seats are all like black leather and dark
Yep.
wood. So everything was super dark, and we were talking the night before, what do we wear? Because like I think left to our own devices, both of us would probably show up in like navy blue t-shirts, maybe.
Probably, yeah.
And that would have just vanished. We would have like blended into the background. So that's why we wanted something that had a pop of color and would be visually interesting right off the bat.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing another wardrobe is one of those things that I never thought I would have to think of for myself, right? So initially my thought was purple donut polo. Like
Sure.
this is a purple donut ad. Let's put purple donut polo to it. But I'm pretty sure you were the one that brought it up, and you were like, hey, the seats are black. Like what can we wear? And I was like, let's be a little crazy and go Hawaiian shirts. So
yeah,
it would have been funny if we both wore the same color, but we did have the conversation about that beforehand, being like, I have green, purple, and black and red, and obviously it wasn't going to be black and red. And we both sent photos. It was the whole thing. It was actually like a process.
It very much was, and it worked. I mean, when you first said a Hawaiian shirt, I was like, really? I don't know how that. And then
you are the king. You're the king of judging great ideas at first. That's your crown. You wear.
I am that meme from LA Noire where it's like press X to doubt. That's me.
Yeah.
That's just my default. I'm very suspicious of a lot of things at first.
Yeah, but that wardrobe included, Gasu coming to help run the slider and press record on the couple angles and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That was super great. So organizing with Gasu was great. He's a great dude. Gasu shot me is his socials. Look him up. Like, he's a homie. He can lift a lot of weight too. So if you're interested in that, he does well in that realm.
Helps for loading gear in and out with us.
Yeah, helps for, like, I'm taking this in one trip kind of a thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, so we show up there, we have the idea of 4 angles, right? One is a slider shot pushing towards popcorn bag. Yep. Second shot is a 2 shot of you and I in the seats. And then third and fourth shots were just one, like, a shot of me over your shoulder, a shot of you over my shoulder. Yeah. And did we use your solo shot?
We did, actually, very briefly. So
okay.
this is the thing that's so funny about that scene, is that, I mean, it's the first scene, so it needs to be like visually really good and have an impact. But the whole thing, remember, the whole ad is only 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. I think we're in the movie theater for 5, maybe 6 seconds.
It's quick.
It's very quick. But we used also, it's got that first shot, the push into the popcorn, and then it goes to a 2 shot of us as like kind of introducing the the two main characters, so to speak. And then it's me saying, we should make a video that's as epic as the stuff you see on the big screen. It's got a close-up of me doing that, and then it goes to your reaction as a close-up, and then it's the two of us standing up and walking out of frame back on the 2 shot. Yeah. And so there's actually 5 shots in that like 5-second
which is nuts.
And it was the most coverage we did of any of these scenes.
Of all of them. Yeah, which is crazy.
Like, by far. Most of the rest of the stuff we shot was like, we need 1 shot. With 1 angle, 1 shot, and that's it.
And if you already didn't know, or if this is your first time hearing us talk, Cameron is like our post guy. So he's watched that scene about 600 times easily.
Seriously.
So don't make fun of me for not knowing the exact run of each shot that we
I
took.
think I could recite that thing. I think I could recite the whole ad verbatim in my sleep at this point.
If you gave me a couple minutes, I could think through it. Yeah,
You'd get there. Yeah.
I'd get there. But yeah, so you tighten that one up neatly there. It goes through those. We go through our lines. Each angle, we did our lines 4 times, 3, 4, 5 times on each
Yeah,
angle. I
3.
think the one angle we did one, but that was just because we were like, yeah, we might use this for a half a second. We don't know.
And we were getting really good at it, like,
Yeah.
by that point, because we just ran through the
I
whole
think it was
scene.
I think it was the last one was your angle over my shoulder, I think, and we had already read it off 20 times. So
Yeah, we'd gotten the rhythm down. We knew what we were saying. We knew how to say it, and like
mhm.
the blocking of us standing up at the end, and the blocking for us standing up at the very end was also very intentional.
Yes. Yes. So the final shot, us standing up, Cameron rolls off to, would you call it, screen right? Is that how you would?
Uh,
I
yeah, I think that's
don't
fine.
know. He
Stage
rolls off to
left.
the right.
Yeah.
I roll off to the left out of the chair, and we walk out of the scene, and it transitions into our first scene, basically establishing what we do. Um, and that was shot almost last.
Very close. I think it was the
Yeah,
second to
that was
last
second
thing
to
that we
last
shot.
one. So out of the 5 shots in the actual piece, that was the second to last shot, and it is the second scene in the video, which
Yeah.
is sometimes thinking of that strategy of like piecing this together. Like, okay, we started the beginning at the beginning. That was great. Then we started the middle right after the beginning, and it was like my brain was trying to conceptualize it on the car ride to the shoot of those ones, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I got to get in the mindset, even though I was behind the camera for one and in front of the camera for the other. Like, it's like a time warp for me. But
Yeah.
we roll into the wedding scene. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Cameron's getting up out of his chair in a direction that is smoothly transitioned and replicated at the wedding scene. Now, setting this up, we had our beautiful couple for their like 4th wedding appearance. I think it has been.
Yeah.
Um, they came in on a lunch break to
Literally.
shoot this scene for us. It was, it was on the downturn of fall, turning into winter. So it was about 35, 40 degrees and windy as heck
Yeah.
this
Wind
day.
chill was nuts.
It was not the most fun time, but I think that made us get it done quicker because I think we only took 5 or 6 takes out of that.
Yeah. And
And
they were
each take
quick
was like,
takes.
yeah, it was like 5 seconds. So visually, you guys will see it. We'll show the ad. You can find it on our YouTubes and Facebooks and all that kind of stuff. And we'll have a deeper, like more scripted, intricate video version of this. So you will see the ad there.
Yeah.
But if you're just interested in listening to this, go to our Facebook page. It's there. It
Yeah.
looks really great. But the idea was Cameron is coming out of his chair, rolling into the scene. He is shooting a wedding. Okay. Our lovely couple is actually at the wedding site of your own wedding, Cameron.
Yeah.
We were able to repurpose Cam and Kate's beautiful arch in their backyard.
Which we specifically set that up because we got married height of COVID, and we set this thing up, this like little arbor thing in our backyard. We had a tiny little backyard wedding, and we were talking of where can we shoot this? Do we rent out a place? Do we reach out to some venues we've shot at and ask if we can use it? And then we were like, hold on,
Mm-hmm.
we can just do this. Like
Yeah,
It's
and it
we know it
worked
looks
out
good.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
it worked out great. Um, one comment. Well, let me keep going forward. So you roll out of the chair. You're shooting the kiss. They're now married, and then you turn and walk down the aisle and are talking to the camera. You know, at Purple Donut Studios, we capture life's greatest moments, and like that is your first introduction to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful couple, a beautiful scene. I'm standing in the back, tucked by the bush, with the Ursa 12K following you across as you walk down the aisle, and then you
Practically in the
walk out.
bush, to be fair.
I was basically in the bush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, the reason behind that is, as Cam said, he had a quaint small wedding. It's a
Mm.
small area. It's not huge. You could fit comfortably 10, 12 people
Yep.
in that spot with chairs and an aisle and all that good stuff.
We had
Um,
7, I believe.
yeah, yeah. So I was right there. Look at that. Um, but we just picked up, which I didn't talk about fully yet, the gear.
Mm.
But we'll go through a gear list after the timeline. We just picked up anamorphic lenses. They are the Blazar anamorphic. Is it set A?
It's the Remus Set A,
Yeah,
I think, was
Remus
the
set
package we
A.
got.
Uh, First off, if you don't have anamorphic lenses,
Oh boy.
get some. We've been talking about cinema lenses basically our entire business relationship.
Yep.
But making the decision is something that I wish we would have done so much earlier because
Seriously.
these things are sick. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, Now, with that being said, in the theater scene, well, the set of them is a 45, a 65, and a 100.
Millimeters.
Not super wide.
Yeah.
So the movie theater scene was majorly shot on the 45. I think one scene was a 65. I think that was the push shot. I
The
think we
close up
changed
of the
that like
popcorn bag. Yeah.
yeah, that was the last second like I don't want to see my chin. Let's just let's make it a little tighter with the lens. But um, so space, which you'll come to find when we get to the next scene, or the scene after next. Um, Space was something we really had to be conscious about, because shooting on a 45 doesn't give you a lot. A 45 anamorphic
Mm-hmm.
doesn't give you very much room to work with, if that makes sense, in the sense of distance.
Yeah.
So the yard being small, it was a little closer than I visually would have wanted because we did use the 45 there, but it worked out really well for what we were doing. A little more of an up angle on you when you're passing by, but totally fine. That's a hindsight is 2020 moment.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it ended up working really well. And that was, we didn't use a slider on that one. That was just you handheld. And
Handheld,
that
yep.
allowed you to kind of like pan with me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm kind of coming across at kind of like a 45 angle, kind of
Yeah,
across frame and
you were
towards you.
walking towards me, which was definitely the move because it felt like instead of walking like across the screen, it just felt more natural that you were coming down the aisle towards the camera, having the
Yeah.
conversation.
And it was so much more interesting than
Yeah.
just either walking straight towards the lens or across
Yeah.
frame. It did
And
mean that
going
you had
handheld
to.
versus like a tripod like pan,
Yeah.
that the handheld made it well, we were more versatile too because there's no way we would have fit our massive new tripod where I was and
Yeah.
myself. But yeah, go ahead. What you were saying? You were saying
Oh,
something about me. You can
I,
talk
I,
about me.
I can talk about you. Well, I was going to praise you for the fact that because I'm walking at an angle, that meant that you had to both pan with me and pull focus with me because I'm
At the
getting
same
closer to
time.
the lens.
Yeah.
And one side effect of these cinema lenses is that their focus range, their depth of field is like razor thin.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to let something drift out of focus.
Yeah.
Um,
There were out of the best takes were the last 3 takes. The third to last one was solid. I think you stumbled a little bit. The second to last one was the one we used.
mhm.
But I think the second to last one was the one that was out of focus. The last one is the one we used. We like nailed the line, and then it was just up to me basically to get the focus right. And like you said, it's razor thin, but those lenses give you a look that you just can't achieve otherwise.
Yeah.
Like
It's got a
there's
vintage film
mhm.
look, and there is something very specific about it. Um, I think the wedding scene. I think we had the most takes of the wedding scene.
Mm,
That feels right to me because it was one of the more complicated ones because it was
I think you're
handheld,
right.
and we were doing like that was some of the most complex choreography because I was like standing and then turning and walking
Mhm.
down the aisle. Uh, no slider, so it was strictly handheld plus
Yep.
pulling the focus. And then Chris and Sierra, our couple, like they were great. Like
Yeah.
they nailed it every time.
They've done that wedding kiss 100 times by now at least.
Pretty
Um
much.
so it was probably the first scene was what we have like an hour and a half, like 2 hours with setup and strike. I
For
think it
warehouse,
was.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, at warehouse. This one was like 35 minutes maybe, and 15 of it was, getting gear out of my car, bringing it down around your yard. The first thing the first issue that we had throughout the whole thing, which I don't think there was any, but this one was, we took the camera out of the bag. The visuals on the screen were moving in slow motion
Hmm.
because the camera hadn't acclimated to it being that cold outside, because it had been in my warm house in a bag, and it kept its warmth all the way to your house, and basically was just a little slow,
Yeah.
slowly waking up. So
We had to put
we
it
took it
back in the
inside.
house for a minute
Yeah.
and let it kind of chill. Well, not
Yeah.
chill, warm up and
Yeah. It warmed up. Yeah. It definitely was that was an interesting one, because I'm looking at the screen, just testing the shot, seeing where I would stand, checking the angle, like, and I'm like, Cam, this is moving at like 20 frames right
it
now.
was
Like,
so
it's just
weird.
not real time.
Yeah,
Like,
that was very weird. I've never seen anything like that before. I've seen lenses and filters get kind of fogged up or like frosted over. I have never seen a camera go into slow motion because it was so cold.
yeah, and it was actually slow motion. So that was interesting. That was our real only hiccup, gear wise,
Yeah.
throughout the whole process. Um, One note that Johnny had actually said to me, he said that the scene looked like it was a warm summer day, and I was like, "Oh boy, only if you knew, Johnny."
And I mean that was intentional. When we get
Yeah,
to post, I can talk a little bit about that. But yeah,
yeah,
it was not. I think that was part of the reason we were so efficient with that because we just, well, Chris and Sierra were literally there on their lunch break, so they needed to, they had like a
be
half
quick.
hour.
Yep,
Um, but also like those poor guys. I mean, at least I was in not a full suit, but I was in like a blazer. I had layers. I was dressed the way I would be dressed if we were shooting a wedding. Again, wardrobe wanted to be appropriate to each scene. And you were off camera, so you were in like a sweatshirt and stuff, so you were somewhat protected from the elements.
yeah.
Um,
I was warm in my sweatpants and sweater and jacket. Um, yeah, Chris was in a suit. Sierra, poor Sierra, man.
what a
She
trooper!
came bundled up in like a thick jacket and whatever, changed into her dress, and I just felt bad for her the whole time.
Yeah, she powered through. Man, she was awesome. So yeah, that was both the most takes we did and I think the fastest
Yep.
individual shoot that we had.
That's a close that okay, we'll call it a close tie because we'll get to tacos here.
Yeah.
Um
Which
but
to even confuse the timeline a little bit more, the next two shots we've then went into the next shot was you at Straight Shot the gym,
yep.
which then goes
Yep.
into me at Tortacos. We
Mhm.
actually shot both of those pieces, those scenes in the same day, but out of order. We shot Tortacos first.
Same day out of order and to just preface like getting as much done as humanly possible in the timeline that you're given. We did a full menu revamp photo shoot for Tortacos
Mm-hmm.
that morning. And initially, we were like, yeah, maybe we do it before we do the photo shoot. We started setting up the photo shoot. We were like, there's no way we'll get it done before the photo shoot. Let's do it after if we have time. You know, you and I thinking like, yeah, we'll be good. We'll be good on time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point in there after at the end of photo shoot, like where we were kind of like, are we gonna be able to get this done? Because we're down the road, you know, we're 35, 40 minutes away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get all the way back up to Frederick to shoot Straight Shot because Johnny only had an hour and a half time block that he could do because that's a busy man.
Yeah.
If there was anybody to try to schedule something with that is difficult, it's Johnny. You know, love you, bro. Your schedule's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyways,
I don't know when he sleeps.
dude, it's insane. Anyways, we are like nearing the time to like it's drop dead like we have to leave and we're wrapping up the photo shoot and you and I were just we gave each other this look and we're like, all right, we're gonna do it, let's get it
Yep.
done. And one note about that, insane that we got that one done
Yeah.
in the timeline that we did. Like where I think this is super competitive with how quickly we got done the wedding scene is because we literally set up the slider, got the camera going, got the lenses ready. You got yourself into the Tortacos shirt. We got John and Gabby to give us a plate of food. Like it was all of that was done in probably the same amount of time we did this wedding. The wedding setup and gear like loading and striking.
Yeah.
Like
That is very fair.
that was a quick one. And there was only 4 takes of that one, maybe 3.
3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was a good one. But that setup kind of sucked. This is where I wish we had the Blazar 33, I think they have out there, or 35.
33 or 30. I think the 33 is the one that would actually be like at a similar aperture to the other
Yeah.
set we have.
So the downside of getting the Blazar kit, one, extremely affordable for the quality and the product that you actually get.
Truly.
2, they have other kits that have more lenses. They just weren't available and like available in the style we wanted. We didn't want a colored lens flare. We wanted like the neutral white one. Like,
well, we ended up getting. I believe we ended up getting blue.
So,
but not amber. We didn't want
not
amber
the
lens
amber
flares.
one. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Was it was amber and I thought it was gold, but I guess it's just the neutral one.
Yeah, there's blue, white, and amber lens flare options, which I think is just a coating that they have on the glass that basically makes it so when lights flare out, the flares are a specific color. White would have been fine. I believe white was also like impossible to get.
Yeah, I think the kit that we wanted, without getting 20 lenses, it was only like white would have been great. I think you wanted white. I think I wanted blue. I don't remember.
Possibly. I think we were both kind of like, yeah, white or blue. We both were like, not amber. Something about
Yeah,
that warm lens flare was just like, no, that doesn't
threw us
feel
off a
right.
little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, the
Nah,
blue is not a particularly intense blue.
no.
Like it's slightly cooler than a neutral white flare. So I think we ended up getting the right the right one.
Yeah. So there's options, but there are a lot of options. One, the kits save you a little bit of money. Um, that one was the only one that was really available and was like within a reasonable amount of time. Um, so with that being said, not having a wider lens, back to that note, the hallway that we had to shoot in is what, 8 foot wide, maybe?
Oh
It, you
gosh. I think it might be closer to 6.
think 6?
Because
So
if I laid down crossways in that thing, I would take up like the whole hallway.
yeah, that's valid. So this shot was a slider shot, and it's a shot of us or Cameron in the restaurant walking through. You don't see it at first, but he grabs a tray of food from John and Gabby, and then he lifts up his camera and is like he is shooting a shot for the restaurant. And the way we achieved that was the Ursa on a slider. The slider is we can piece it together um, to where it can be shortened in length,
Yeah.
but the width of that
It's like
thing,
3 foot chunks of rail.
yeah. So we had 6 feet on there. I don't think we had all three.
No, yeah.
So we had two links on. We had the stands. We had the Ursa, and all of that was as close to the wall as it possibly could get.
You were literally standing like on you were standing in front of the slider,
I
not
was
behind the slider like
between
you normally would
I was
be.
between you and the camera,
Yeah.
basically.
And you were like basically off to the side. We actually had the handle for the tripod head sticking out like towards the lens, alongside the lens, and then you were standing off to the side,
Mm-hmm. I think if
operating it.
I think if it was like a two times, what's the squeeze or whatever, I think it would have
Mm,
caught my shoulder in it.
probably,
Like
probably.
I was that close to the camera.
Yeah, and it
Um,
still ended up being like I wouldn't classify it as a wide shot. I'd classify it as a medium. You were getting like kind of chest up
yeah,
to my hairline,
yep.
and that was
That's
about it.
that is another scene where I wish we had that 33, 35, but another instance of we made it work
Yeah.
because pushing the stuff up against the wall, still using the slider, still using the Ursa. Um, we manipulated things on the scene that could be manipulated, aka me.
Hmm.
I was the thing that was manipulated, and instead of being behind the camera, I was in front of it with our Hollyland turned towards me. And like you said, the arm was facing outward towards the lens. It was or with the lens parallel, and it was definitely a tougher scene to shoot, especially in that timeline and
Yeah.
trying to get back up to Frederick to shoot with Johnny.
Yep.
But you walk through that. We use the 45. You walk across the screen. You have the food. Their food is delicious. They have uh, Gabby waving. John has a line. And we wanted it to, even though it spoke like, one, you're wearing a Tortaco shirt.
Yep.
It's basically saying we are there. We're repping their merch. We're getting their food. And the two owners who they're the decision makers. They're the people we directly work with every month. They were in the shot, which, like you said at the beginning, that was one of our first ideas, was including people that we work with directly
Yeah.
throughout the entire process. So
Exclusively. It
yeah,
was only
exclusively.
it was only people who are actual clients. And I actually had um, one of our good friends who saw our ad at Warehouse asked me after the fact, like, were those actors? Like, did you bring in paid actors and stuff? I was like, no, those were all we just asked our clients, we were like, hey, would you mind like being a part of this? And every single one we asked was like, absolutely, let's make it happen.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the other great thing is we have a great like clientele base,
Yeah.
and they were all stoked that we were doing this. Like
Yeah.
they were so happy for us and super happy to be a part of it. So it was a nice easy cast. We'll say that much.
Yeah. Big time.
Um so this transitions part of the timeline conversation. We get this shot done. We get packed up really quickly. I think we were like 10 minutes behind where we wanted to be, like on timing and getting set up at the gym and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but it was like clockwork. Once we pulled up to the gym, we knew what gear we were going with. We brought, I think, exactly everything we needed inside.
We were like
Um,
ready to shoot in, I think, under 10 minutes.
Dude, that was probably the fastest setup I've ever I've ever been a part of.
Seriously. I was
Um,
genuinely like, wait, is that everything?
yeah,
We actually did this? Wow.
exactly. And cool thing, like we walk into this, I'm pretty sure you were still wearing the Tortaco shirt at
Yeah,
this
because I
point.
wasn't going to be on camera for this part.
Yep, you were still wearing the Tortaco shirt. We were still doing the slider, and we told Johnny, we were like, hey, dude, we're ready for you. He was asked, I'm pretty sure he asked you about the shirt. And then he
Hmm.
was like, oh, hold on. Let me get you guys some shirts. I was like, wait, like straight shot shirts? He's like, yeah, dude. And he came over and brought both of us straight shot shirts. I was like, heck yeah, man. Like we're repping it.
That was great.
So the goal of that scene was, we have a gym client, gym environment, and if you haven't noticed, we're going back and forth between. Well, this will be the establishing thing of our goal was to go back and forth between Cam and I,
Yeah.
since we couldn't both. I mean, we could have both been in each thing, which was a vision for the wedding thing.
Hmm.
There was a time there where it was I would be the officiant, like standing there, and you
Yeah.
would be walking with the camera, kind of like cameo style, like um, logistics. We scratched that idea,
Yeah. We would have
but
needed someone like Gasu to help us with every single shoot. And
every single thing, and
yeah.
these being on specific days, it's the middle of the day, all day. It didn't make sense to try and bring somebody along
Yeah.
and kind of like, because those are full days. Like the whole Tortacos one was full menu shoot their ad piece, and then drive back to Frederick, shoot that ad piece. And the concept behind that was, like you said earlier, ChatGPT gave us the idea of like, be in the gym. This is what your line is going to be. We help your brand flex its muscles. Like, I don't know if we conceptualized it beforehand, but we pulled out the 70 to 200, and Johnny and I, before we pulled the 7200 out, Johnny and I have this like bromance a little bit, and he was like, dude, we got to get a pump before we get on camera. And great idea, because we both looked great.
Yeah.
Johnny looked jacked in the background. But we did like push-ups and rows and all kinds of stuff. The scene was me walking through left to right, Johnny and we had envisioned a client. That is basically what this person was, but it was one of his coaches.
Hmm.
They were working out. He brought them in. He was coaching them doing TRX rows, and I was walking through the scene curling a dumbbell curling the 70 to 200, and my line was, and we help your brand flex its muscles. And
Yeah.
I walked off to the side.
And I don't know how
And
many people will actually notice that you are pumped. Like the motion is very clear that you're doing like a dumbbell curl kind of a thing. I don't know how many people will realize that it's a 70 to 200 lens.
yeah,
But
um,
that's a nice little Easter egg for us.
Now you know if you've listened to this. Um, but yeah, so those shots were back. We shot them backwards, right? It goes, opening scene in the theater. It goes wedding shot at Cam's, which was way later on timeline wise. Tortacos, and then, or well, straight shot, then Tortacos, and we shot them in vice versa that
Yeah.
day. So another time warp, if you could say.
Yeah.
And we had a couple more things that were lined up to be shot for scenes. Like we do a lot of product work and supplement work, and we have t-shirt design companies that we work with, graphic designs, and or for tees, graphic tees. There we go. That's the word I was trying to get to.
There you go.
But we felt that with the 30-second time crunch and all the shots and everything we've already done, we're hitting our core clientele.
Yeah.
High quality gym video, which people would see right after, like we did potentially, weddings, restaurants, and then kind of wrapping it all together was a overproduced scene. Was kind of what we were thinking, was like over production value scene, all the lights and light bars and what do we have? Did we use the director's chair in this one? I think we had the director's chair.
We had the director's chair. We had a boom mic.
With a dead cat, totally unnecessary for the indoor environment.
Oh yeah.
Roast us if you see it, whatever. But we knew what we were doing.
Yeah,
we had
wanted
the
it to
in
look
the background.
yeah,
it was a whole thing, man.
We wanted it to look super like you are seeing basically every bell and whistle that we can bring to bear.
Yep. Minus the Ursa, which if we had another one, it would have been great to put the Ursa in there. But
that's my only regret, is that because we wanted to shoot everything with the Ursa, we could never have the Ursa on camera. So the only camera that's actually visible in the ad is the Pocket 6K Pro, which admittedly still looks impressive because it's like rigged out and
it's still got a nice kit. It still has the nice vibe and doesn't look like a Canon or Sony, so it looks super professional. Boom roasted. Yeah, so well produced shot. We had to close all of Cam. We did it in Cam's living room, basically dining living room, like combo room there. We probably spent the most time of this entire shoot like nitpicking the setup of your room.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
Covering the blinds with sheets and closing the curtains and talking about if the Christmas tree in the background was going to be a bad idea.
Yeah. Because it ended up in there, so there is a Christmas tree in the background. But honestly, like part of the hallmark of an anamorphic lens is the oblong oval shaped bokeh that you get in the background. And man,
there's a lot of words
tree
you just said there.
Yeah, it's a lot of $10 words.
Oblong oval shaped bokeh.
And a Christmas tree is just basically a bokeh generator. It just gives you gorgeous little flares all over the place. So that was partially why. Again, I needed to be convinced. I was the one that was most concerned about the
and then we tried we matched the color the lighting temperature to the tree, basically.
Mm-hmm.
We did try the colorful version because you just have a fake tree with lights built into it, basically, and you hit a button and it can be rainbow lights, and those gave us really bad
flicker.
Yeah, the flicker was so bad when we changed it back. I think there was still a little bit with the warm white kind of lights, but it wasn't enough to notice.
Yeah, it was manageable. And like that, it was the kind of flicker that I don't know why, but basically there was not a shutter speed. Normally, if you have lights that are flickering, especially like cheap LEDs, it's because there's the lights are they are actually flickering. It's just faster than the human eye can detect.
Yep.
But combined with the shutter speed of the camera, if they aren't in sync, that's where you get like weird flickering, and like it can kind of appear almost as like scan lines where there's like a darker bar that like crawls down or up the
Yeah,
screen. It
exactly.
can look really weird. For whatever reason, I think because there were so many individual lights, each light had kind of its own flicker frequency. We could not find a shutter speed that would completely remove it or eliminate it.
Yeah.
But we did
Yep.
find one that came pretty darn close.
Pretty close. And it looked better with the warm light, just in general.
Yeah.
The soft, warm, white light, whatever you want to call it, whatever setting it is.
Yeah.
But that overall scene, you know, the goal with it was to look well produced. You know, we were both in our purple donut polos. The start of the scene is me in the director's chair. It's got the interview look, so I'm not looking directly into the camera. I'm looking away, and it's we're more than just a production company. And then it's the action of me standing up, and then switches to a wider view of that exact same scene where you can see the boom, you can see the lighting, you can see the tube light, you can see the whole thing. And Cameron walks in from the side of basically where I was looking to be interviewed from, holding the you're holding the camera in this one.
Mm-hmm.
He's holding the camera and says our powerful line of we are Frederick's creative powerhouse. We're Maryland's creative powerhouse, and it fades to like a purple overlay with Purple Donut Studios logo and wrap the whole thing up, man. That was a fun one. I really like when we started the journey of Purple Donut Studios, we already realized like we were a good mesh
Mm-hmm.
of skills and character and taste for things.
Definitely.
And then seeing this in the Tortacos Christmas like catering thing are like
Mm-hmm.
my top two things we've shot ever. And they were
Agreed.
both the most recent, like bigger productions that we've done.
Yeah,
So
and both were with those new anamorphic lenses.
new anamorphic lenses, the Ursa 12K, like we're exercising these things, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of encompassed everything, that scene, the goal was to show, production value and high quality cinema look and, interview style shoots, because that's another thing that we do.
Yeah.
And
And the thing that I was really excited about with that was that transition from the close-up interview style shot of you, which is just like it's clean. You don't see like any of the the lights or the mics or any of the accoutrement.
yep.
It just looks like this is a gorgeous finished product, and then it cuts back to the wide, and you can see it's in my head. It's sort of like representing here's all the work that we put into this stuff. Here's what all we do to make sure that it looks like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that's a little can be a little tricky when you're advertising a video production company like this. I have found, at least, is that you can make something that looks gorgeous, but a lot of people, unless you're like in the field, you might not fully understand why it looks as good as it does.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
it kind of like it doesn't stand out to you. And like as an editor, one of the things that one of the phrases that people always say is like, if you've done your job as an editor, no one will notice you. That's the goal. Like if someone is looking at a piece and is like, oh, this was edited really well, then you have failed, because like you are supposed to, the piece is what it is. You're not supposed to be thinking about how this was edited. But this was a moment where we were able to kind of give you a peek behind the scenes and say, no, look, this is like, we're kind of showing off what we can do here.
Absolutely. And I think similar, like if you are a video production or creative marketing person and you are trying to instill in potential clientele like what it takes to get this done, I think the way we did it and portrayed it in the ad uh, helps kind of set that precedence where it's not like, Purple Donut Studios doesn't show up, and just bring their iPhone to shoot your thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to get this look, this is what we need to do. And it shows value. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
shows the value of our services without saying, hey, we bring, these X watt white or X watt lights, and they cost us this much, and we use a $6,000 Ursa 12K OLPF and Blazar anamorphic lenses and blah 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 blah. Like, that's not how you portray value. That's you saying how much stuff costs,
Yeah. Yeah.
So showing that scene at the end where it looked really good, looked really clean, and then pulling out and seeing the equipment just, you know, just shows your potential clients like this is what we would do for you.
Yeah.
And there's
And
no justification to like at that point you're not like, if a client comes to you, they see all of this stuff, they know that you're going to deliver. You're
yeah.
going to deliver a high quality, high value thing. So if you come to them with X dollars, they're not going to be like, oh, well, why is it X dollars? They
Yeah.
will already see that value coming through if they come from that ad. So just a little tidbit there.
100%. And I think that can be applied to a lot of different fields, whether if you are looking to make an ad for your company, your product, your service, whatever it is. I think that's something that can be applied regardless of what field you're in. I think about
absolutely.
the kind of work that we do with Tortacos as an example. We don't just show like the front of house stuff of like, look how pretty the food is when it comes out to you. We get in the kitchen and we show the process. We show them like, they're cutting the onions, they're stewing the consomme, and we show them at the grill, showing that process. And it's like, this is the care we put into it, and this is what you're getting besides just, look at the pretty final product, showing a little bit of how the sausage is made, at least the sexy parts of how the sausage is made, I think is a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that being said, I know when we were conceptualizing office hours in this first one, we can segue, if it's in your order of documentation, into a really cool statistic that we would like to lay out for you. If it's there, if that's okay, if this is an appropriate segue, because I think this is one of the most interesting ideas we have ever come up with.
It's a fun one. So part of what we do, like at the end of the day, when we finish all these shoots, what we end up with are digital files. And those digital files are rather large.
Huge.
So huge that I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand. Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around how big this stuff is. And this is part of like, you want to talk about maybe the not so sexy part of how the sausage is made. There's a whole like infrastructure that we've had to build to make it so that we can reliably store all this stuff and work with it for the post-production side.
Mm-hmm.
This was actually a rather small shoot for us in terms of the final file size comparatively. And a lot of that is because it was only a 30-second ad, and we were also very efficient with our takes. We didn't have a ton of takes. We didn't have instances where we just kind of like let the camera roll for 20 minutes while we were doing stuff. We were pretty tight about it. Truly. Who would shoot where they just let the camera roll? So it's just one massive clip. Anyway, so fun little statistic about this. By the time everything was said and done, this shoot came out to about 500 gigs of raw footage, which again, on the small side for us.
That's tiny. Wow.
Comparatively
for what
us,
we did? Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, seriously.
All 12K, 24. Sheesh. Sheesh.
Yeah, like I said, we were efficient with this one. Usually our stuff is more in the like 1.5 to 2.5 terabyte range. But something we wanted to start doing, and you'll see this on our socials and stuff too, but to put that file size in perspective to something that you can actually relate to. If you were to have 500 gigabytes of music, like you've downloaded 500 gigabytes of music from iTunes, that would be enough music to play continuously with no repeats for about 1 year.
Oh, baby. That's a
So
lot of music.
as a lot of music. You remember like the old iPod days when they were advertising it's 1,000 songs in your pocket?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, this is this is a little bit more than that.
Which it comes to, I don't know if you have this in your version here, but if one shoot was 500 gigs
Mm-hmm.
and we've done, say, 15 shoots, 20 shoots,
Yep.
how in the world do you keep track of all of this?
Very carefully.
Give us the layman's version.
In terms of like file organization and
Oh yeah.
structure and all that stuff, you want
Yeah.
that kind of nitty gritty?
Talk about the server. Talk about what we got going on behind the scenes.
Oh boy. Okay. So the way that we're able to hold on to all this stuff at one time is a massive storage server, file server that we have that has I think it has I think right now it has 7 or 8 drives in it that are the old school, big, thick, spinning hard drives because we just need size. We need capacity. And SSDs, solid state drives, are very fast, but they're not as cost effective. So it's better for us to get multiple of these big tank like drives that are spinning at 7,200 RPM. We've got like 8 of them shoved in this little box that gives us a little under 50 terabytes of usable storage. Bear in mind that is after we're taking into account redundancy. So it's set up in a way where if one of these hard drives were to fail, and it's a spinning hard drive, so it's going to fail at some point, if one of those hard drives were to fail, we don't lose any data. We swap in a new hard drive, it rebuilds itself, and we're back in business. So that's how we're able to hold. Yeah, that's how we're able to hold onto these projects for, we usually hold on to the raw footage after we finish a client's project for at least a month. And oftentimes it's more than that. Company like Tortacos, we have kept everything we've ever shot with them because we do more projects with them. And we're able to go back and be like, oh, we need an exterior shot of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got that like one of our first shoots, and we can go back and grab the full quality clip of that and use it. So that's how we're able to hold on to this much stuff. Again, 500 gigs is a lot. It was kind of a drop in the bucket for that server. It was literally
seriously.
It was literally 1% of our usable storage.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we need a name for that segment, but our storage comparison to random life things. Here we go.
Love it. That's the name.
Awesome, Cam. So we finished the shoot. My strength. We've talked about what storage was needed in our comparison, which thank you for that. That was great. I don't think I've ever listened to that much worth of music in my entire lifetime, and I don't think I ever will.
Yeah, I hope you don't.
That's a lot. You should have broke that down into hours, but that's okay. I'm just kidding.
It's 525,600 minutes.
Jeez.
I only know that off the top of my head because that's from a song from Rent where they're talking about
oh boy, here we go.
A year. It's 525,600 minutes.
Moving into your strength, one of your strengths, your strongest strength probably. Is the post-production.
Yeah. So post was kind of interesting because it happened actually not all at once because we had days between these, shoot days that we were scheduled for. We shot the warehouse piece one day, and then we had I think we had a couple of days before we shot Tortacos and Straight Shot, and then we had I think a week until we shot the wedding and then our outro. What I was doing is, as this footage was coming in, I would go through it and I would do a very rough, just glance through it, pick out what I thought the best take was, drop it down, not really doing anything in terms of cleaning up or, in the case of the opening scene, changing angles or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first things that I realized when we did that was we were coming up on that 30-second limit. So we had a hard cutoff. This thing had to be 30 seconds exactly. We initially had another scene. You kind of alluded to that, where we were going to show some like close-up product photography. And we had that scripted. And we thought, based on like reading the script and playing it back in our heads, we thought we were going to have enough time for it, and we just didn't. The pacing was a little bit slower, and I couldn't condense things enough. So we actually made a kind of at the last minute, we decided, let's scrap that scene and just go straight into the outro. So that was one thing that was handy about starting to piece this thing together before we even had everything shot, was we were able to see, okay, this is working, but we're running out of time. So we were able to save ourselves some extra work on that. There were a few things that we did with this edit, and it ties into the shoot as well. One thing we really wanted to make sure was that it felt cohesive throughout, because we're going to all these different spaces. We're in a dark movie theater, we're outside and under the bright sun for a wedding, we're in a gym and a restaurant environment. Very different lighting conditions, even though we are bringing our own lighting, but still it's different lighting conditions. We wanted to make sure that it was as consistent as possible, cohesive, and so we used another new tool, which I think this was something that, you talk about how I sometimes doubt your ideas. This, I think, was something that you doubted me on at first, I think.
You had, just a little preface, you asked me about this before. Mm-hmm. Like this was something you had talked about at least a month before. Like, oh, we should get some of these to like make things make sense. And I was like, okay. And then we bought anamorphic lenses.
Yeah, I was like, if we get anamorphic lenses for you, you're letting me get this.
Yep.
I'm just pulling it up so that I can tell
trade-off.
you. Yeah, you can get $2,000 worth of lenses if I can get a $40 piece of paper.
Yep.
Basically is how it worked out. So what we got was a color chart. And a color chart is basically literally a fancy piece of paper, but it has different squares of specific colors on them. And they're printed in a way that the color is very accurate. They're printed on paper that doesn't have a lot of glare. And the idea is you show these cards to the camera when you are setting up a shot. So like when we were at Warehouse, we would either before or after we shot our scene, I would take this card out and I would hold the card kind of right up to my face. You want it to be right around where like your subject is. And I would just show it to the camera. And then you do that for every single scene. So when we went to, Tortacos, that was very different lighting conditions, I held the card up. If you have that for every single scene, what you can do in post when you're doing your color correction and your grading is you can basically tell in software, you can say, hey, DaVinci Resolve. That's what we cut this in. Resolve.
Yeah, DaVinci.
So good. Resolve, look at this series of colors. This is the card I'm using. So Resolve actually has certain brands of color charts built into it. So I can say, Resolve, this is a spider checker 24. Here are the squares. You like kind of line up a little grid so that it knows where it is. Correct this image based on this grid. So basically Resolve knows, okay, well, this blue square, I know it should be this blue, but it's actually a little bit green. So I'm going to shift that color channel more towards blue and away from green. It's got grayscale. So it's like, I know this is supposed to be pure white and pure black. And then these are the grayscale ones in between and all this stuff. Basically what it does is it gets you to a neutral standard. It's kind of like a calibration tool. But because you do it for every different scene under a bunch of different lighting conditions, it can correct for those different lights. So like basic things like color temperature, it's like correcting your color temperature, but it's doing it for 24 different color channels or colors all at once. So when we first started doing this, we did it for the stuff that we did in Warehouse, and it was a nice look. Like it brightened up the image. I believe it cooled it off a little bit. It did some good stuff. So it was like, yeah, that looks nice. And then we did it for our other scenes, and that was where its power really showed off, because you can look at those other scenes and be like, oh, the colors match. Like, they look pretty much the same. Sometimes a little off, but like a lot closer. And like I said, we were all over the place for the different environments, bright outdoors versus interior of a movie theater could not be much different, or much more different than they are. So that was one thing that we used and have used in everything we've shot since, because it's just a great tool to kind of jumpstart you matching. It means that I don't have to manually match different scenes, but I can then layer a creative grade on top of that to say, I want more contrast, I want more saturation, I want to shift the colors this way, but I don't have to grade everything to the same starting point first and then do my creative grade. So
And the
that
first time
was,
you showed me this in post, I was like, okay, you're lining up these little squares. It's a little gray. Now that's cool. And then you click the button. I was like, that actually looks pretty nice.
yeah,
that,
that was the
that did
thing. It like
that
it
did
actually
great.
kind of corrects your exposure even a little bit, because it's got the grayscale stuff. It's a lovely tool. So we got it on a Black Friday sale. So ours was it's the cheapest one you can get. It's $40. There are fancier ones that have like clamshell cases and stuff, but you really don't need much more than that. So that was one tool in post that, especially for this project, was a big time saver for us. The other thing that we did in post was we actually did all of our audio in post. That was a decision we made early on. We thought about making it so that we would mic ourselves with like lav mics or like maybe a boom mic or whatever. But again, we're in all these different environments, especially for something like the wedding environment where we were outside and the wind was going at like 50 miles an hour. We're like, it's going to be nigh on impossible to get clean audio during that. So why even try? Was basically our thought. Especially for a shorter project like this. So what we ended up doing was we recorded just scratch audio. Did not sound very good, but it was enough to give you an idea of like, okay, we hear what you're saying for all these different pieces of dialogue. We cut everything together using that scratch dialogue. And then you and I sat together at my desk. We set up a shotgun microphone on a little mic stand, and each of us took turns going up, playing back our scenes with the scratch audio, and then talking over them into the shotgun. So we got this incredibly crisp and clean studio quality sound, and consistent. It all sounded the same, and it we actually got pretty good at lining it up. Like,
Yeah, I was that was the first time I had ever done that. And it didn't take me 100 takes to do each line. Now granted, each line was like 6 words, but
we benefited from how short each of our lines were, and how short the project was, that it didn't take us days to do this. But
yeah,
it's
that
it's
was
the technique is called ADR, or automated dialogue replacement, or automatic dialogue replacement. Bit of a misnomer. There is nothing automatic about it. It is a very manual process to get everything to line up, but we got pretty good at it. And again, I think it saved us time when we were shooting, because, like, as you have heard, we were on fast turnarounds for a lot of these shoots. And if we had thrown in needing to capture really clean audio for all this stuff, we would have been there twice as long, easily. So that was something that we felt like, if you're going to be watching this in a theater on like a Dolby Atmos sound system, let's make it so that this actually sounds really crisp and really clean. And there one thing that we did have to kind of get used to: when you've got a mic that's right in your face, your instinct is to talk, well, kind of like you and I are talking right now. We've got mics that are just a few inches from us. You're not speaking very loudly. You're not projecting. You're not throwing your voice out the way that you would if you were talking to someone or a camera that's like 6 feet away from you. So, and when we first did it, we were talking at this kind of like lower tone, and it really just did not match the visuals, because it was like you've got me like walking through, this outdoor wedding environment, and it sounds like I'm like right in your ear. We
Yeah,
capture
that's
life's
weird.
greatest moments, and I'm like actively walking past you. It just felt really weird. So what we had to do was we had to basically imagine, okay, we're not talking to the microphone, we're talking to the opposite wall. And that was what did. So it was a difference of talking like this and talking like this, because this is how we would talk more in that environment.
Yeah. That did make a huge difference. And that was one of the first takes, you've had experience in the projecting of your voice, and the projecting your voice at a wall. So to me, when I heard myself talking in the microphone, it was like I'm talking now, where it's on a podcast. I'm talking directly into somebody's ear,
Yeah.
but it
It's
was
not
this.
quite not quite ASMR, but it's close.
Right, close enough. But yeah, that was the first thing to me that I noticed. I was like, when I kept hearing it back, I'm like, I'm saying the words at the right time. It looks like I'm saying them on camera, but it just sounds like I'm talking to me. Like, just that's
Mhm.
it. So once I started talking to the wall, I felt, being 10 feet away or whatever. It made me feel like it was more cohesive, like you were saying. It felt like
Yeah.
you're actually in the scene.
Yeah. And once we figured that out, I think we only needed like 2, maybe 3 takes for each line to find something that lined up really nicely.
Yeah, yeah, we crushed that.
Yeah, I felt really good about that. Uh, for the rest of the cut, the biggest thing with the cut of this was just getting the pacing right. Because it is such a short piece, the pacing has to be really fast. But that was part of why we made the decision to cut that extra scene that we initially
Mm-hmm.
had in the script, because we were like, okay, we could cram it in, but we would have to cram it in. We would have to like
Yeah.
really like up the pacing, especially for that opening scene. It's the probably I think it's the longest scene in the whole thing, other than maybe the outro, which is just longer because it has the logo and the call to action and everything on it. So that opening scene, there was a version I had early on when I was trying to still make room for that extra, the extra scene we were going to add, where I had it so that everything, all of our dialogue was practically overlapping. Like it was almost like we were stepping on each other, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and there is, if you go on any kind of like YouTube video or any social video ever, you will eventually find someone who is cutting their stuff so tight that it's like it's usually just one person, but it's like they're recording a voiceover and they have each line of the voiceover so close to each other that they are actually speaking the next line before the previous line has finished. Have you seen
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah.
That annoys me so much. I hate that. And
Yeah.
part of me hates it because it's as an editor, I'm like, no, that's not realistic. That's not what we want. But I think I also don't like it as a viewer because you're not giving me a chance to breathe.
Yep.
Like there's a lot of like psychological stuff that
It
people
is.
have studied with.
Yeah. It's also crazy too. Like, it doesn't take much either, right?
Oh no.
Like it is a very common mistake, like, that I've seen over my time doing video, where you could tell people are newer to video and cutting and editing when it's like it's a shot, an angle of a person, their line is going, their line ends, and right as it cuts to the other angle, that person starts talking.
Yep.
Now, what I always have liked to do, and what we did well, was kind of like giving a little breath at the end of the line, and then having the line kind of start as it's cutting over to the next scene. Like
Yeah.
that's something we've worked in, we've weaved in well with other projects and everything.
Hmm.
That is, like, in my eyes, the most optimal for something like kind of like the pace that we did here. Was like, there's a beat of breath, of space like a normal conversation would be, and then the next line from the other person before it cuts to their angle
Mm-hmm.
starts to come in, and then, bang, they hit a certain word or a certain amount of time allotted, and it switches to their angle on the screen.
Yeah. I love that technique. Those are, and that kind of cut, they call those J cuts and L cuts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And basically it's because if you imagine, usually in editors, you've got a track of video, and then below that you have your audio. So if you think of those as two layers, think about the shape of a J and the shape of an L, where an L, you've got the lower part of the L, which would represent the audio, that extends past where the upper part of the L does. And then a J is the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
The audio comes in before you get the
Why
video.
don't they just call it a backwards L cut?
Because J's exist.
Oh, true. That's
Yeah.
valid.
Um, but we actually use those. Every cut in the opening with the in the warehouse cinema section is a J cut or an L cut. So you're hearing, say we're on the close up of me, we hear you start to speak before we cut to you,
Mm-hmm.
just a couple frames.
Yep.
But it
It
is
just
there.
makes it feel so natural,
And part of the reason it does feel natural is because you're mimicking. If you were there physically, not watching a video, if you were physically there having a conversation with us, if I'm talking and you're looking at me, and then all of a sudden Brian starts talking off to the side, you hear him speak and then you turn to look at him. That's how
Mm-hmm.
naturally you look at conversations. You don't anticipate the exact moment that Brian's going to start speaking and look over to him ready to hear him. That's why it feels so much more natural, because you're mimicking how we view conversations just in the real world, which I find fascinating. That and timing your cuts to people's blinks were two of the biggest uh, eye openers for me when I was learning how to cut. But then, also, like we were saying with the pacing, like you said, you don't need much. I have found that if I really want to let a line of dialogue breathe, I will add 3 frames of space between 2 lines of dialogue.
Perfect. Yeah.
And 1 second is typically 24 frames. So it's, what is that? An eighth of a second?
You'd be spot on there.
Cool.
8 of those equals 1.
There you go. I don't think in time. I don't think in fractions. I think in frames.
That actually makes complete sense and is hilarious.
Yep. Yep. It's like, let me tell you, you want pet peeve of editors everywhere. If you're giving notes to an editor and you say, "Oh, I want you to hang on this shot for an extra beat," that really annoys us, because a beat can mean a lot of different things.
Yeah, a beat is completely subject to the piece.
Yeah, and the person. Like
Yeah.
so to me, what I've found is that a beat, usually if someone's asking for a beat, they're asking for 10 frames. But that's not always the case. So yeah, those are the kind of, especially with a short piece like this, that's how tiny those differences can be. It's like just adding 3 frames here and 3 frames there. It can just be the difference between a piece that you're like holding your breath through, and when it finishes you're like, oh god, I'm exhausted, or a piece that you're actually able to enjoy and absorb the information that's being given to you, because we're trying to convey a lot in 30 seconds. We need to give you, as the viewer, a moment to digest it. And I think we struck the right balance with this, where the pacing was really fast, it was very energetic, it held your attention, but it also gave you those moments to like, oh, okay. And I think one of the moments that really did that was we added, kind of in the moment, a moment in the Tortacos scene where they hand me the food and I say thank you, and then I hold the camera up and walk off, which I think was partially why we ended up needing to cut that extra scene with like product photography, because that added an extra like second and a half maybe
Yeah.
to
Yep.
the whole thing. But I actually really like that being in there, because it's kind of right in the middle. and it gives you a moment to like breathe, catch your
Yep.
breath, and then we go into the final moments.
Absolutely. Yeah. That was good.
Thank you. So yeah,
Yeah.
those were the big things as far as the edit goes. There's a lot of other like detaily things, but there are things that we can talk about for other cuts in future. That was the big stuff that was like specific to this project. Something that we should talk about at some point is how shooting anamorphic affects post um, your post
Post
technique. That was
workflow and
Yeah,
yeah.
that was something that we had to figure out because again, this wasn't the first project we shot with anamorphic, but it was one of the first. So we were still kind of dialing in um, how we handled that.
Yeah.
But I think that's
And
something we can
there's
talk about
like
at another time.
the during the shoot, one note about anamorphic is make sure one, you either have a external monitor that can de-squeeze it if your camera can't embody,
Mm-hmm.
and two, uh, make sure your camera can handle it because it's not made for every camera, it's not made for every sensor, it's not made for everything. So that like us going Blazar, Remus, like we know that our cameras are capable of de-squeeze and of a
Mm-hmm.
certain type of de-squeeze, certain ratio, and
Though,
our
though actually they're not, not quite right.
not well. Is yours has it? Mine doesn't, or is it the
Mine doesn't even. Neither of ours has the correct. It doesn't have the
number?
1.5 D squeeze
Yeah,
ratio.
yeah, which is a thing that they're coming with. So that was one like learning curve with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But thankfully we have a Hollyland Mars monitor or
Mm-hmm.
M1 or whatever it's called. Um, and that one has like 10 different options, de-squeeze options.
Yeah.
So anamorphic, you can't just slap it on your camera. Like
No.
do a little bit of research and figure out what works for yours and stuff.
Yeah, and it's gonna like your settings need to change. How you handle it in post changes a lot. But one thing so if you know about anamorphic, one of the things, the hallmark of anamorphic is basically that what you're doing is you're taking a wider field of view and you're squeezing it into your standard frame.
Mm-hmm.
And the 1.5 you hear us talking about is the ratio. That's how much you need to then de-squeeze it or stretch it back out to make it look normal. And basically, because you're doing that, it gives it a certain look that is very hard to actually like describe.
Yeah, without the D squeeze, everything just looks like morphed tall.
Yeah,
So
it's
if you,
you're squeezing it into it like a funhouse mirror, like
yeah,
one of those mirrors that makes you look really skinny. It's that. It's literally that. Um, so the net result is that you end up with, well, first off, you end up with, once you de-squeeze it, you end up with a piece of footage that is a lot wider than you would probably be used to. Now, that might not make sense to you because we've been talking about how our lenses that we were using, like the 45 millimeter we were using, was so tight. You might think, well, if it's a 45 millimeter, but it's actually 1.5 times wider, then your field of view is actually like a lot wider. Yes, but only horizontally, not vertically.
mm-hmm.
So that's why the shot of like me and Tortacos when we had the slider up is still just like chest to hair is basically what that is. It's incredibly wide. Like we were able to get like the entire counter in frame at once before we cropped it to a standard frame size. But that vertical doesn't change. So you still have 45 millimeter vertical space, if that makes sense. That's probably something that we should do a video on at some point because having
Yeah,
visual like representations of that would be a lot more helpful. And it's frankly something that I would have loved to have seen when I was doing all the research on anamorphic.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, add it to the list, man, because that would be very helpful. And it's a difficult thing, at least for my brain, to figure out if you're just describing it to me in text form.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the whole process, soup to nuts, of how we did our first ad. Again,
boom, baby.
Take a look at our socials. Take a look at our website. We're gonna have a full breakdown on the website of a lot of what we just talked about, but in a little bit more of a concise, edited way. This is the sort of raw stream of consciousness version for you guys.
Yeah, and we'll also be posting a YouTube more produced version of this also, and probably more concise and scripted. But scripted YouTube videos, they're great. Keeps you on track.
We'll have bullet points. We'll stick to them.
I'll be fully scripted.
Yeah, you probably need. We had bullet points for this, and look where that got us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with that, that's our first episode of Office Hours. We hope you guys liked it. Let us know in the comments or reach out to us on the website what you guys think. If there's any subjects or topics that you want us to cover at some point, we've got a lot of ideas rounded up. But again, this is more of like, this is kind of how the sausage is made. We want to hear from the rest of you creatives or anyone who's working on your own video campaigns. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you would like to ask us to do some deep dives in, both on the podcast and in our other video and social content that's going to be coming up very soon.
Yep.
And yeah, follow us wherever you can, iTunes and Spotify for the podcast, and all of our socials for everything. Is it
called
else.
iTunes?
Oh gosh, I'm showing my age, aren't I? It's Apple Podcasts.
Oh boy,
iTunes is better. I will hold firm that iTunes is a better brand name.
Whatever.
But Apple Podcasts work. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.